Hello everyone, B1B Flyer here. We're going to do a little bit of Brush Care 101. A lot of you have asked about how to take care of your brushes, how to clean them, all things like that. So I'm going to talk in length about how I take care of my brushes, some of the things I've learned over time by ruining many brushes, and things you can do to help prolong that. First things you need to do is accept that brushes are like the tires on your car. You're going to wear them out, and eventually they do need to be replaced no matter what you do. Sometimes you get a flat tire from time to time. It can be repaired, sometimes it can't. So if that analogy makes any sense to you, then you'll understand how brushes can be cared for, and you just have to accept that sometimes you're just not going to be able to keep it as long as you'd like. So I'm going to go over some of the brushes that I have currently. This is a Winsor & Newton Series 7. These are anywhere from $15 to $20 depending on where you buy them. I have several of these, and for the longest time I was afraid to use them because I kept ruining many of my cheaper brushes, and I didn't want to go through $20 brushes because I didn't know what I was doing. Um, that being said, I bought some Ironwind Metals brushes that I think they were of $10 for a 3-pack, and you got a 0, a 5.0, and I think a flat tip chisel or a flat tip brush. But anyway, those seemed to last okay, but what ended up happening is that sure enough, I was ruining them. And if you see here, I've got some 5.0s, and you can see that one on the left is fine, the one in the middle one's starting to get worn, the one on the right is pretty much done. And in fact, I've even tried to salvage it a little bit. Um, and then even they get worse is this another number 5 here that's been messed up. The brushes are splayed, bristles are splayed. So uh, the quality of the brush doesn't always necessarily equate to the length of time that the brush will last. That being said, there is no perfect answer. They do get worn out, and your technique on how you paint is also something that can be a factor. The tips on these have been bent over to the side from probably using the tip a little too much, or maybe I was doing something that involved that kind of a detail, and the brush wore out. So these are some royal gold brushes here, and then I've got another, just a Kolinsky brush, and this is a number 4 generic brush I got at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and I've used this brush to paint several miniatures. I'm not doing it to boast or to be like, oh, look what I can do with a brush. However, what I will say is this brush has surprised the heck out of me for how many miniatures I painted, the amount of detail it's able to do for its size, and just the value. And I like the fact it does have a larger handle, so when I'm doing some of that initial work where I'm doing a lot of blocking and base coating, actually is pretty nice. It also does great for a wash because it's got a nice big area to maintain the bristles. So we'll come back to those in a little bit. I want to talk about, which you can probably see before, is parts of the brush. So each brush is going to have at least a handle. It's going to have a ferrule. There's different parts of the ferrule. There's like a, a base or a, it doesn't matter, but there's somehow have a crimp on them on some of the flat brushes and things like that. And then you got the bristles. So I guess there's like a toe if it's a flat, and there's a foot. Anyway, the point is, every brush you're going to use is going to have the handle, the ferrule, and the bristles. The part you want to be concerned the most about are the bristles and the bristles inside the ferrule. Inside of there, there's glue that holds the handle to the ferrule and holds the bristles in. If that gets clogged, or if that gets soaked and ruined, the bristles are going to suffer. Or the ferrule, because the wood is a material that can swell with moisture, can cause the ferrule to become loose, and then your brush basically becomes useless again as well, because this gets loose, the bristles become loose, come onto your work, end up all over the place. You can, if you have a brush fall apart on you, it's definitely an interesting experience, but you'll notice it when it happens. So that being said, now that you understand the parts that I'm talking about, to care for those things, you need to basically keep your bristles clean and your ferrule free of built up and accumulated paint. So the way brushes work is, you put the tip of your brush in the paint. The paint, by capillary action, if your paint's thin enough, will come up to the bristles, and then you can go and paint whatever you're doing. Well, if your paint's too wet, or if you're using washes, or if you leave paint on there and it slowly wicks up, or you just don't wash your brush, or you dip it deep in the paint, you get that paint up into the ferrule there, and eventually you can't get it out. It'll dry and it'll get stuck in there, and then you have only a matter of time before those bristles start to do what I was talking about before, where they're splayed out and you can't really keep them back together no matter how hard you try. They just want to be, they don't ever come back to a point. So to prevent that, you got to wash your brush. You need to wash your brush while you're painting. You need to rinse it out, clean it. Now, there's no right or wrong answer to that. How much you wash your brush is up to you. I tend to do it when I'm changing colors, or after if I notice I've gotten a little tired, or I have to start adding a little water to my paint. That's when I know it's definitely time to give the brush a rinse in a clean cup of water. I keep a mug of water at my table. That's what I rinse. Just a real good rinse. What I used to do, and I actually attribute this to why some of those brushes, those Iron Metals brushes, were damaged before, is I used to put water in my tray here, and typically I would use that to mix paints and things like that. But what I was doing was having a little water in there. Let's say, for instance, blue paint. I would rinse it off in there, and eventually that water would become blue. Well, eventually you'd have enough paint in it to where it would probably be wicking up into the ferrule, and there'd be, it doesn't matter how small, but over time, once that ferrule and the upper interior parts of those bristles get contaminated, again, it's only a matter of time before those bristles no longer want to stay together at a nice point. So if you're using washes, for sure, because you're going to get all that capillary action to go up into the tip of or into the ferrule of the brush. Rinse those out real good when you're done with the brush. Don't wait. Don't let it dry. Rinse as you go too. You can wash part of a miniature and then rinse off your brush and put more water, and then pat off the brush and then go back to doing what you're doing. It's not going to affect it. Dry brushing, if you can't save those. Those dry brushes are going to get ruined. Those are relegated to, hey, this brush has had its run, and now it's going to finish its life as a tool that's just going to look miserable. So don't bother trying to. You can clean them and rinse them off, but you're not going to save one of these. So don't worry about that. So how do you clean your brushes if you're just rinsing them off? Well, there's different ways to do that. You can use a lot of different things. In a pinch, if you have it, you can use dish soap. This is nice because it's soft on hands, whatever, tough on grease, says right there on the bottle. But realistically, what it is that it doesn't strip as much of the oils, the natural oils, especially on the Kolinsky or the sable brushes, the natural hair brushes, because those do have natural oils in them, just like any other hair does. And once you strip those off, the bristles can become dry and brittle. They can actually break. That's where the tips of those brushes start to look bad. That's what can happen to those. So if you don't have anything else, dish soap is much better than, say, hand soap or alcohol or some sort of brush cleaner that's harsh chemicals and things like that. It's not necessary with acrylics. As long as you keep the brush wet and you clean it frequently, you don't need to use something super harsh. Also, keep a dropper bottle full of isopropyl alcohol. This is great for cleaning up paint trays. Someone asked about that a while back. Cleaning up work areas. This will strip off acrylic paint. So but again, it's alcohol, so it's going to strip off everything. So if you use alcohol, you want to use something they call brush soap, and that's what's been sitting here on screen for a while here. This is what a lot of people use, the Masters brush cleaner. You can get this on Amazon. You can get it from Michaels and Hobby Lobby, probably even your local game store if they've got a decent sized paint section. This stuff is great. All you do is it's like a hard kind of a waxy substance. You get your brush in the water. You swish it around. I'll just even show you. I'm going to clean a clean brush here. You just get it around in there. You're going to get that soap kind of damp in that area. And I'm rolling this brush in my fingers as I'm doing it just to kind of get all over. And, it might take a little bit. You might need to put a little more water on there. But eventually you kind of work up a lather. Now, I've seen some people demonstrate. You can see it's on there now. Some people demonstrate that they'll do it on their hand and kind of work that lather. That's fine. And again, you can see I'm rolling it with my fingers like this because I don't want to mash it in. But some people will kind of swirl. That's fine. I try not to be super harsh on this because I don't want to, go to some sort of angle where I'm potentially damaging it. But you get the point. And what you do is after you've got that on there, you can, rinse it off, swish it around in the water. I like to use a paper towel. And again, I tend to use a rolling action. I don't smash it in. And if I do kind of drag it, I'm rolling it as I do it because I want to try to keep that natural shape of the brush. So once it comes back clean, then you've conditioned the brush. And that's what I would do after I was done to put it away, for instance. I would rinse it off completely after I've cleaned it several times, and then I would go back to that soap, and I would put just a little bit back on, the damp brush, and it's perfectly okay to leave that on there, and then shape the brush. If you want to use your fingers, that's fine. I probably wouldn't put it in my mouth at this point because it's going to taste like soap, but that'll help you keep it conditioned over time if you're going to put it away for a while. So brush soap, and I have a different one here from Games and Gears. I bought some brushes from them, and they ended up giving me this came with the pack, but you can see I use that quite a bit. Actually just bought this. So anyway, either one of those will do. A brush soap or a conditioner is something that is definitely going to help prolong, especially the natural brushes. Synthetic brushes need to be washed as well, so if you buy this, it'll work on both. The Viejo also has a set of a brush cleaner, brush restorer. I like this cleaner. It works really well. I tend to put it in my little dish there and kind of dip the brushes in as I'm going. Kind of keep especially with like black paint and washes and things like that. Kind of can see that kind of work its way out. Very similar to I think to alcohol. It says cleaner and restorer. I probably wouldn't call this so much of a restorer, but the actual brush restorer, again, you can soak brushes in them. You got to be careful with that. That's something where you kind of almost have to prop the brush up in a like this, so that only just up to the bristles is being soaked if you're going to leave it overnight or whatever. But you don't want to leave it for days and days or whatever. It will eventually, like I said, soak the glue and ruin the brush. So just keep that in mind. There's plenty of different instructions on how to use the brush restore, and you want to just follow the manufacturer's instructions on what they have. So just keep that in mind. So for brush care though, that's what I tend to do is I wash, rinse, use the soap as I'm going, or I'll use an alcohol, clean it off, especially if I've got something like a wash or whatever I want to get out of there. And you can start to see though, there'll be a darker area at the tip of the ferrule. This brush has had several colors that admittedly I've messed up this brush a little bit, and it's going to start to do its thing. It's going to get ruined, but it's not there yet, and it does have a little bit of damage here and there. But again, I've gotten a lot of use out of this brush. So this is what you want to avoid though. This is eventually going to be what happens if you just let it go. You're going to get that splayed look. They're going to start to get wayward and you're going to start messing stuff. This is okay for like a detailed dry brush, maybe for some washes and things like that. It's still usable, but it is no longer a detailed brush and is not a brush that I would go to do anything other than some general work. So how much should you spend on brushes? Well, there's another good question I'm sure you were all thinking about. So like I said, I talked about some of the cheap brushes, the $20 brushes or whatever. Buy what you're going to use. If you are not comfortable using a $20 brush and potentially going through it and having a problem with it, you can start with a lot of stuff that's cheaper. I'm not going to push any one brand. I will say that these were $3.99 at, even says on the package there, at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. I think it was Hobby Lobby, and you can even get like the coupons they have online for like 30 or 40% off, and you're paying like a couple bucks. Less than $1 per brush, and you get a something that you can use as a dry brush, and 3 brushes that honestly, if you're learning to paint, these are what you really. It's a 0, a 6.0, and whatever. You can look and see. There's several different kinds. There's different colors of handles, different stuff. But this is a this isn't a natural. These are nylon brushes. You get a 0, a 3, and or a 6.0 and a shader, which is the bigger one. But honestly, if you're learning how to paint, go buy these. I'm 100% serious. I've used these now, and I've done some of the miniatures that you've seen me do. I've done with these brushes. They're not garbage. Now, some of them don't necessarily have the best tip, but this one's even got a really, really fine hair that might not be something you'd want to use. But these two in the middle here, definitely worth it. Something along the lines of like, I think this is what it's China, it's a synthetic brush, but this, I can use this all day long and not feel bad about it if I mess it up. But it probably cost, maybe $1, maybe $2. I don't know which kit package of brushes it came in, but go into the brush section of your craft and hobby stores or to your local game store and find brushes that you like. You like the bigger handles, they have those, all that kind of stuff. So realistically, it's whatever's comfortable. Something else I stopped doing a long time ago, and I realized that this is probably what saved a lot of the damage as well, getting that paint up into the ferrule, is if you look at my brushes and my brush handles, they are covered in paint. You've seen me do this in some of my videos where I use my brush handles to dip into a pot of paint if I'm trying to put paint into a dish or to measure it out or whatever, or simply just to stir it if I'm adding water or any other media. I use this to stir. Why? Well, if I'm taking this brush and I'm jamming it into the paint and I get all the way up into the ferrule, or I'm using it to mix it around, the only thing I think of as I'm cringing is that I'm just jamming paint up into the ferrule, and eventually that brush is going to be ruined because it's going to be a pain to get that paint out. So my technique and my preference is I don't use my bristles to dip into paint or to wick it out or to measure it out. I use something else. Or if you want to have a dedicated brush for that, or some cheap, crappy brush, or that's what you use it for, do that. But don't use your good brushes for that, and they'll last longer, I promise. I even have ones that I've dipped in like gold paint or whatever to use for metallics, because I'm starting to get a little bit more neurotic about getting gold flakes or silver flakes in some of my other detailed brushes, things like that. So you can do that too if you want. It doesn't cost anything more than a dip in the color of paint that you might want to use it on. But those are some of the things that I do to prevent brush wear. So what I have noticed is that my nice brush, my Kolinsky, and my other Ironwood Metals brushes and even some of those other, like I said, the budget ones are lasting a lot longer. Um, like I said, if you're doing, techniques where you're pushing the brush down, um, like this, if you're doing that, you're gonna do what's called break the tip or bend the tip, and you're gonna end up with kind of like this little like wisp of. I can't help you with that. That's either a technique or it was maybe something that you were doing where you involve dots or something like that. Whatever. You just got to accept that it's going to wear on the brush, and you might just want to have a brush that you accept with that, and maybe not use your super expensive one that you wanted to paint, something detailed or lining with or whatever. So just keep that in mind as you are painting, and the more practice you get, the more experience you get. But like I said, if I were learning how to paint brand new, I would go and buy those budget brushes, and as I kind of got comfortable, I'd maybe buy a set at my hobby store or order one online or whatever, and then eventually, go and spend on the nice money on a nice, Series 7 or I really do like the Winsor Newton brushes. I'm letting you know right now they're my favorite brushes. Um, they do a great job, but that doesn't mean that they're the only brush. There's plenty of good brushes out there. If you are looking for something where you want to do, as you start to get into more detail, you definitely want the Kolinsky Sable. Those tend to be the nicer bristles, and they hold up longer, and they do really nice detail work, and they hold a nice solid tip. I don't lick my brushes. I used to. I don't do it anymore. That's up to you. Really not a preference. I don't have a preference to put paint. I don't know what's in some of these paints. I think there's like a titanium or salt or something like that. Anyway, particulates for some of those colors. It's generally probably not good for you. That being said, if it's your habit, it's probably not going to kill you quicker than something else, but I don't do it. Like I said, I tend to shape my brush on the paper towel and I just roll it, using my thumb and finger, and I get a nice shape out of it. If you want to use the restorer or you want to use the brush soap, just doing that rolling motion, set it a nice tip. If you have those little plastic covers that a lot of them come with, these little deals here, save those, put them in a dish or something like that so you can put them back on your nicer brushes. If you got a brush stand, uh, vertical ones are, quote unquote, not as good because it allows the moisture to drip, go down gravity, whatever. Honestly, most of the time I'm laying my brushes flat like this, the ones that I'm using actively. And then once they're dry, I'll put them in the vertical stand. So that's another way you can kind of get around that. But I'm not going to be hanging my brushes upside down trying to, work up some sort of cantilevered clamp system to make sure that they're all, dripping downward. But that's just me. If you got something more clever or you use some sort of series of pulleys and magnets, then, have at it. Anyway, all joking aside, I hope that answers a lot of your questions on brush care. If you have any other questions, feel free to post and comment. Please visit our Camo Specs page, our Facebook page. You can also subscribe and look forward to more future videos. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.